50s or, going into the 60s, but you take it back to World War II, and we can connect the dots here, and this would take us down another rabbit hole. But what's interesting, you connect the civil rights movement in America, or then the United States of America, and you connect the dots to the liberation of colonized places throughout the continent of Africa and the Caribbean, because they all coincided around the same time. So you had the scramble for Africa in the 1880s, which then led to all of Africa outside of Ethiopia and Liberia being colonized. But then you get to the 1940s, and post World War II, Europe was decimated. So therefore, a lot of the European powers were no longer powers, didn't have the resources to, in essence, manage these colonies in Africa and throughout the Caribbean. And then that was also the rise in some of us on the continent becoming more awake in our thinking. And it was like, okay, we want our freedom. But then the start to the civil rights movement as well in America, you connect the dots. And then you also had the tail end of some of the Pan-Africanist ideology, like with Marcus Garvey, which was connecting the dots to Black people across the world. I mean, it's again, this thing is so deep. And when you start going down rabbit holes, you can spend the rest of your life focused on this, but it can also serve as inspiration of what's possible.
I fully agree. World War II is a wake-up call. I often refer to it as the most pivotal event of the 20th century, because it gave rise to so many things afterwards. And if you think about it for a moment, these European powers were using colonized people to fight the war in many instances. So if I'm living in India, or if I'm living in other countries in Southeast Asia and on the continent of Africa, and I'm going off to fight a war for the liberation of a people, I'm colonized. You're in my country. Where there's a level of hypocrisy there that you just can't get over. And so definitely that war became the springboard for many of those liberation movements around the world. And you start to see people begin to look at the world in a different light, begin to take a little bit of agency over their own lives and their own resources in their own country. And the same thing happened here in the United States. Those soldiers coming back from World War II became the catalyst for our modern movement. And one thing that I found so fascinating, when Bayard Rustin and the others were organizing the March on Washington in 1963, one of the things that they did to keep a crowd that size so organized, they used World War II veterans because they had the experience. And so they organized, those sergeants organized them at the squad level, so to make sure that everybody was okay, nothing would break out. And that's why, even though you had people like Strom Thurmond saying that there was going to be anarchy and rioting in the streets during the 1963 March on Washington, there wasn't one single incident because they were so well organized. Same thing happened in Augusta, Mike. There was civil rights before the 1950s and 60s in Augusta. Obviously, I just told you about Lucy Laney. But it took someone like Reverend C.S. Hamilton, the pastor of Tabernacle, and Reverend N.T. Young, the pastor of Thankful in Augusta, to add a measure of leadership to it. And then you sprinkle in there the students from Payne College, the only HBCU in Augusta. And when you put those two together, you have a powerful force because they are organized, they have solid leaders, and you have foot soldiers at the ready to do what's necessary to break down those barriers.
Organization, leadership, and manpower.
There you go.
If you stop and you